Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. I'm joined as always by my co-host, longtime friend, and first-time worm reader, Andy. Andrew, how's it going?
It's going okay. No major disruptions or cataclysmic events here, so I'm happy about that. Apparently, Cyan is busy elsewhere. This week this episode, we'll be reviewing Arc 29 Venom. And for new business, we're welcoming back Tony. How's it going, Tony?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's our pleasure for sure. And we also have some questions and comments, I believe.
Yeah, we do. There was quite a discussion, quite a few comments about the whole isn't she a parahuman thing as it regards to dragons. So let's read through some of those. First off, we hear from Vale. I don't understand why the thread of optimism would be snapped. And I think, Andy, this is regards to you and how I think Daniel and I last episode might have been yanking your chain a little bit. But anyway, to continue on, he says, has anything happened to this point in the entire story that suggests things could get worse? Maybe you could give some examples, though they are likely easily refuted as actual good outcomes. Pardon me. I'm going to skip that comment he put in the middle, and I'm going to read around that thing. So it says, maybe you could give some examples of things that you think went slightly wrong enough to be a detriment to optimism. Love this review. Thanks so much for tackling Worm. And I'm going to say, Vale, that I think might have been more of a thing where Daniel and I were just kind of poking fun at Andy because my boy is an optimist. He's always had that outlook in life since I've known him anyway. And so, plus we kind of know what's coming. So maybe Daniel and I might have been poking a little fun at Andy that way. But anyway, moving on. Next, we hear from Megafire 7. Megafire says, I really like the interlude this arc, specifically because it misleads the reader in whose interlude it is. Interludes tend to humanize the POV, showing us the nuances in their perspectives and giving them their histories and their histories texture, as monstrous as they may be. Very true. All except this one, Dr. Mothers. We learn nothing about her. A person whose humanity has been entirely subsumed by the role she's playing. I also love that the Simurgh is so pointlessly overdramatic. It's kind of harsh. The stab upgrading of Leviathan is filled with capital S symbolism, but means nothing, exactly nothing. She does it just to show off. And that's such a fun trait for it being like her to have. Tony, do you want to comment on that? You agree with Megafire on that one? Is it just how you like me now?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Having read both parahuman stories, yeah, I guess I don't comment too much on that, but I can definitely see it going that way for sure.
Well, I guess from my take, I kind of saw it as a little bit of a parallel to Agent Smith in the later Matrix movies, where he's just converting things. So my question was, all right, there's an outward change, but is there some other Simurgish change involved
Mm,
here? Is there stuff that we may not know that required that particular stab mechanism? But anyway, that's just me
oh yeah.
probably getting way too paranoid about this.
No, that's good paranoia. It's not paranoia when or when it's true or when it's like it's not a conspiracy when it's true or something like that.
When they're coming to get you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, those are
Who
good
knows?
instincts. Those are good instincts.
20 after 28 arcs, maybe Andy's honing his paranoia to the proper response. There you go. Okay, I'm liking this here. Next, we hear
As calculated by the Simurgh.
Goodness.
Oh man.
Yeah, Simurgh 1, Andy. Forget it. Give it up. Yes.
She won she already won a very long time ago.
Yep. Next, we hear from Sword Crab. Dragon is absolutely a parahuman connected to a shard. Back in Defiance interlude, he noticed that when she thought about tinkering, part of her code was way outside where it should be, almost coming out of nowhere. He looked back at her earliest available records, and at the start, her code was complex, but everything was flowing from A to B to C in a logical way. Her code changed during the years after Richter's death. So it can't just be that Richter programmed her to emulate a parahuman. She actually is a parahuman. Back in Defiance interlude, he didn't have the time to search the history of her codes for the trigger event. But given that in this arc, he gives a precise date for that, indicates that Defiant actually did eventually take the time to look for her trigger event, and he found it. Andy, what do you think of Sword Crab's theory here?
Well, I see where that's coming from, and I think that's a valid theory. However, I would like to propose a counter theory, and that is that code can be written so that it's either self-repairing or self-extending.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason that code created at this level couldn't be the equivalent of like chat GPT or whatever. It's just taking in all the data that it can, parsing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that data it's pulling in is code, and it's parsing that and trying to figure out what it is constantly. I mean, it's the computer doesn't sleep, so it's constantly looking at ways that it can try to get around something or improve something. And we don't even know if maybe Cauldron knew about Dragon, and maybe it was putting things out there that would try she would ingest and try to manipulate and parse and
Mm.
add to her code base and then get around something. So
Well,
um
we also know that the Seamerg at one point
oh right.
manipulated Dragon's perceptions by merely moving locations in the atmosphere or something like that, if I'm recalling correctly. So that
Yeah.
she would not see something. There was a transmit. That was what it was. It was transmission for the bird cage up to one of the
Right.
satellites, the house program, and the Seamerg said, I think I'll move this way, and that thing got shunted to another file or access area or something, and Dragon kind of
Exactly.
ignored it. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's a great point. That's just another variable that's out there. I mean, this universe that's been created has so many angles to it that
Mm-hmm.
it could seem to us from our limited scope that it proceeds logically in one way, but I'm just stipulating that there are alternative theories here.
Yeah, and sorry, Tony. Go ahead. You were going to say.
No, I was just agreeing with that. Yeah, it's
Okay.
that's totally fair. I guess if I were to weigh in, I would say I was also under the impression that Dragon did have a trigger event,
Mm-hmm.
leading to some questions about exactly how powers might manifest in this kind of universe. But there are other kind of life forms as well, where we don't see examples of like certain things trigger. Like we don't really see like animals, for example, or things that might be like, even like chimpanzees or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, like if AI, but like this is also something created from a parahuman. So in a way, it's really hard to gauge what exactly would, I guess, with ex absolute certainty, unless we hear it like direct from Wildbow, like, oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
which he does some from time to time. He does actually pop out and Reddit and other forums and just kind of confirm or deny things or just troll the readers.
Yeah, Andy, did I ever mention that to you? That on the Reddit that he puts out his what Tony's told me is called Word of God when
Oh.
Wildbow makes a comment and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's from the man himself. That's must be a thing. But yeah, I didn't know he trolled people as well there,
Oh yeah.
Tony,
Oh,
just to have fun with it.
one of my favorite trolls is Sleeper. The crowd has been like just absolute going crazy with theories about what Sleeper can do what's who's what exactly what makes him so dangerous. And he found it funny that one person suggested, it'd be really funny if we just never found out, and then we just never did through entirety of war. So I'll spoil that and say that yeah, you just don't know. I'm sorry. Like
Okay. All right.
yeah, stuff
Cool.
like that, just real fun little things, and then also stuff to just keep you guessing too. It's like, or is it, and then he'll just say like everyone's wrong when people are coming up with other theories about like what certain Cape's power really is. One of which being Parian. So Parian's power, we have an idea of what her power is, but
Yeah.
you don't really understand what her power is. And everyone was trying to guess, and nobody guessed right from what I recall.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. It's nice to when the author is that involved in the community. So that makes the story much more interesting, I think, anyway.
I agree.
And finally, we hear from the Gym 12, Stewie. Taylor being exasperated at people not being able to work together and cooperate is so poetic with her power taking control and making bugs work together and cooperate. I don't know why we're surprised or still debating whether Dragon is a person or not. We are totally on board with Bonesaw creating people, Noel creating people, Nilbog creating people. I think we struggle with it because it's closer to our reality than those others. Uncanny Valley almost. Either of you gents got any thoughts to what Jim 12 says here?
I agree with that, I guess. I mean, when you're used to unquestioning following of orders,
Hmm.
it makes sense that it's like, all right, can't y'all just be bugs for a minute here? Help me out. And we kind of touched on the debate on whether Dragon is a person or not already.
Yeah.
So that does bring up a good point, though, that if you make something fantastic enough in a story, then people just accept it as a fantastic part of the story. But if it's something that is too close to what could be going on, then you're like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. It's like the scariest movies for me are not like the wild slasher movies where you're like, oh, come on, but the
Hmm.
ones where, like Silence of the Lambs or something where, all right, there could be a criminal mastermind that would be
Yeah.
that messed up,
Seven.
and or Seven, yeah, it's another great example. So I see the point there from Jim Stewie.
Cool. All right. And thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments. They always stimulate great conversation here on the podcast, and we really appreciate it. So now we're going to move on to our review, checking out Venom Arc 29, Chapter 1. We're back at Tattletale's HQ. Taylor and Tattletale are regrouping. They're trying to catch up, share information. And they go over the fact that the Seamerg has decided to take up communicating with people, and B, the doors have stopped working. Andy, why don't we talk about those two things and their importance to the situation as it stands right now?
Well, yeah, the doors stopping working is a big problem because that's how they were able to keep one step ahead, and now they're pretty much trapped, and it's really changes their dynamic. Seaberg talking is just creepy as all get out. I mean, it's bad enough as just floating around and making noises every once in a while, but actually,
What? You don't think just a random voice that sounds like you appearing in your head wouldn't be comforting?
was that was that Tony talking, or was that Tony's voice in my head talking?
Yes.
Uh,
I mean, if it's one thing for me to say, did I leave the stove on versus I'm sorry. And you don't know what
right.
I'm sorry about. But Tattletale is, well, first of all, Weaver is kind of like, hey, the doors aren't working. We don't know why. Maybe door maker is napping. Tattletale's instincts, her spidey sense goes into overdrive. Is like, nah, he don't sleep, and this is an issue. So she begins to make decisive moves. Talks to one of her guys, and she and Taylor then head on out through one of the doorways that's been left open. Good move on her part, Andy, being proactive here.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's like when you're in a disaster movie and all of a sudden the elevators stop working or something. It's like, all right, time to start taking the stairs. We got to get out of this
Hmm.
building. This is not a good sign. So yeah, I think that's exactly the right thing to do.
Yeah, decisiveness when because like the door maker is obviously an OP resource,
Hmm.
and so it's like you really should be prepared for contingencies with the best thing that you have. What happens if that goes away?
Yeah. Let's see here. They travel back to Earth Bet, and Andy, we do get one of the observations. This is a little in the weeds that they noticed the technology that still seemed to be work was either low tech or high tech. I mean, the satellites are still up there and circling the Earth, and the low tech thing of using practically the Pony Express to get messages delivered. You got to do what you got to do given the situation.
Right. Yeah. Anything that is either too insignificant to be noticed or is off planet is in good shape. But yeah, don't want to try to drive around anywhere or anything.
No, not with Vista supercharged and manipulating and smudging the entire viewpoint from horizon to horizon because her manton limits have been unshackled.
Yeah.
Because
So
she
it's oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, she was only limited because the Manson effect wouldn't let her affect areas that had people in them too much.
Right. Yeah. And so now it's yeah, she's not hurting anybody anymore. Yeah, and then it's time for our friend to show up.
Tony, what's he doing here? I mean, as we're rolling through chapter one pretty quickly here, and yeah, Cyan arrives and he's toying with him again, brutally so, but
Yeah, it's
he's
the golden boy, he after his encounter with unlocked Eidolon,
yeah.
if you recall, he may have dipped into his well for something that helps him be a little more like the winner. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, he's going to have more of a propensity to be in places that are very inconvenient to you.
That's true. That's true. Real quick, before we get to that section, I want to bounce back. Andy, do you have any commentary on Taylor's reaching out to the Chicago wards? Just real, it was a brief little segment there where she went and talked to Grace and some of the others, and Grace pointed out a good point. Look, while you were with us, you never really loved us like you loved the Undersiders. I thought that was a good moment, a way to show that other people got how Taylor was acting in Chicago versus how they perceived she was acting when she was with her peeps in Brockton Bay.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those tough parts where I think as a reader, we see something that's probably pretty obvious, but to somebody, like Grace, it's big difference, It's there's nothing like the first group that you hang with and
Mm-hmm.
the first team that you're a part of and you it's really hard to recreate that in any way, especially in this kind of pressure cooker and also not really by her choice.
Yeah, and she
Uh,
was focused on the end of the world. I mean, that was her end all be all for 2 years.
exactly. So, I mean, I guess I get where Grace is coming from, but to me, it's like, well, yeah, obviously, Grace. I mean, what do you
Mm.
expect?
Yeah, I mean, like you have to I mean, from our perspective as readers, like we know what Taylor has gone through with the Undersiders. They definitely trauma bonded a whole lot more.
Ex-
Mm-hmm.
Or, the Chicagoers, they definitely had their, trials and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't compare like her like basically development as a cape to that point where she's kind of an outsider on parole working with them.
right.
As we're moving into this battle section, I don't know if this is fair, Tony. Can you help us with the suits as a group of capes? I mean, I'm not sure I'm understanding all their whole shtick, their whole deal. I mean, we know that their theme is the new suits of cards that have been developed since the existence of parahumans. But like the two that got taken out, the Queen of Swords and the King of Cups. I'm not sure I was getting their power set. Do you recall specifically?
I don't off the top of my head.
Anything
I
you can
can
share
see.
about the suits generally as a unit, or were they that impactful for you as far as the story went? And yeah, we're Andy, we're moving on toward into chapter 2 as Andy or as Tony's going into this.
Gotcha.
For me, not really as much. I don't remember a lot about them. Um,
Other
so
than
yeah.
they got murked in the most horrifying way.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. You know, this was some brutal murdering that Scion was doing here. Uh, I mean, the individual assaults that he did, it was pretty horrific stuff. I mean, when he's at a distance floating out over the central Atlantic and sends a beam out and shatters England, that's one thing. But walking through a crowd, bypassing individuals, grabbing someone by the throat and burning their head like he's popping a pimple, that's something else.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the difference they talk about in warfare from folks who are in the Air Force versus folks who are in the infantry. And
Mm-hmm.
but it's almost like he's enjoying it or just wanting to see it up close and personal. It's or
Mhm.
experimenting. It's just all kind of but he definitely seems to have, I don't know, maybe I'm reading emotion into it, but he seemed like he was not totally disconnected from it like some of his other stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely keep with that train of thought. That's really good. That's
Yeah,
uh
because emotionally he's a blank slate. I mean, several times Wildbow has pointed out that he has the potential to emote or to how do I say this? Okay, so he's a blank slate emotionally, but he is human. He formed himself to be human, and so he could have those tendencies. I think that to develop some emotions, and I think that Tattletale had made that kind of observation, hadn't she, Tony?
yeah, I believe she did at some point. And yeah, like the idea of like he's kind of the kid with a magnifying glass on a bunch of ants scattering
Yes.
around, cockroaches, living in the
Mm-hmm.
previous arc, he just, oh, he's enjoying the process of extermination.
Yeah, he's a man who's really into his work. Oh,
Glorious purpose.
Yeah. Andy, we got the Seamerg holding back Kidwin and Vista from firing at one point, and then it ended up being the right move because it allowed Gavel to make a impact on Scion. Otherwise, who knows how things would have worked. So, to some extent, the Seamerg is playing a positive role here, even though I do believe he pimp slaps her pretty hard later on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Gavel. Little bit of a Thor feel to it there, but
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty impressive. But yeah, it's just he made the big mistake. You know, you don't want to get Cyan's attention.
No, no,
What?
no,
You
no.
don't want to aggro the overleveled raid boss right now?
No, no, yeah. Let's try to sneak around the back or
But
something. Yeah,
but think
but
about
he's
how funny it would be. Have you considered?
No, not really. No, not really. We do get this trigger vision. Is that what it was? Is that what happened, or was that just this massive flex by Scion showing everybody what he truly is, and they can't stop him?
I from my impression it was both. Like it
Uh-huh.
was a deliberate forced second trigger to make everyone have a trigger vision to show how hopeless their situation was. And I thought that was like incredible. Like I was just like, oh man, that's so So disrespectful. I love it. Like that's
it's just a it's just a massive flex. He's like,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And is that how you saw it?
I guess I don't know. It's because the lack of emotion and stuff. I mean, it seems like he is getting that more and more, but to me it seemed more of just if you have the ability to see the path to victory,
Hmm.
then one of your tools in that is demoralizing your opponent.
Very
And
true.
so I just kind of read it more that way. But as we're talking about it with him getting more emotional, I can also see him being here. Let me not only crush you physically, but I'm going to wipe you out mentally and emotionally as well. So here you go. Happy
Yeah,
to.
I think that still can fall under both. Yeah,
Hmm.
Mm,
the path to victory, as well as the ability to taunt is are both not exclusive to each other.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the kind of a, well, maybe not exactly a I'm rubber, you're glue kind of thing, but
It's kind of like like if you watch basket like Michael Jordan trash talk like when he's shooting a free throw and to make fun of Mutombo, he's like, hey, like Mutombo, look, and he closes his eyes to hit the free throw to show how easy the free throw is, and how much Mutombo struggles. It's like a mind game
yeah.
of sorts, right? But he didn't have
Right.
to do that. There's definitely other ways to do, but that's
Right. Yeah. He didn't get any more points for that free throw because he closed his eyes. And
Mhm.
and
But
so
he made a
on the
point.
but I mean on the scoreboard for
Yeah, 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 yeah.
victory, it
No.
didn't move it any
Hmm.
further, but it did have a huge impact on Matumbo. I think that's a great
Exactly.
example.
Yeah, that's perfect. That is very true. Deep, deep inside, rent free inside Batumbo's head, and rent free inside all these capes. Yeah, the situation is now even more hopeless. It should be in their eyes. We know from Scion's interlude the purpose of the shards is to learn by fostering conflict, and ideally, in the had the partner survived, they would have rejoined and shared shards and gotten information, blah, blah, blah. And all he has is this experimentation. This is the only way he can induce this conflict and try to get these shards to learn, I guess. And he seems to be, like we've said already, seems to be a man enjoying his work. Moving further into the chapter, he finishes. He's had his fun, and he decides, well, I'm going to go attack another Earth.
Yeah, just heads out. It's like you guys are boring me now.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's not move too quickly past the danger that Bastard was in there, Andy.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, they had to give him a lab rat pack. That's a desperation right there.
Yeah, and then he broke it though. He caused Rachel to break the vial before she got to apply it to poor Bastard, and she was on the verge of a pretty substantial emotional break. Well, not break, but display of emotions, losing her critter.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty rough. I mean, Weaver was doing her everything she could to try to keep him alive, and then that was
Hmm.
the idea she had, but this was a rough time.
Yeah, yeah. We're moving on into chapter 3 here. It's post battle. Weaver's talking to Legend, trying to figure out what their next move's going to be. It's a shame. I seriously doubt Legend could really harm Scion. I mean, his lasers are awesome, and he's got the flight and everything, but I seriously doubt he could do anything to harm him. That's where we get Weaver coming up with a plan to infiltrate Cauldron. And let's see here. Chevalier shows up, and they have a quick powwow, and they say, look, if you want to recruit kind of a dirty dozen to go in there and try to see what's going on with Cauldron and the doorways, we won't stop you. Maybe not the best plan we agree on, but we won't stop you. And that's what she decides to do, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems worth a shot, and especially the way they describe it, that Cauldron had all these different scenarios and different possibilities. And so you would think that they would have crafted something in case doors stopped working, or the idea with Seamerg wasn't working as well as they thought it would. So yeah, why not go to the source?
Yeah. Tony, Cauldron being offline for this extended period of time, at first I think people were thinking that they did punk out on him earlier in the battle, and now folks are kind of concerned as to this resource maybe having been completely compromised.
Yeah, and I if I recall, we kind of learn a little bit why that, what's going on with Cauldron, and that they also kind of had their hands full.
Yeah, we know from the previous arc that the irregulars plus some other folks, other Case 53s, did infiltrate. This just all the outside groups didn't know at this moment,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why Taylor wanted to grab her elite squad and head on in there to see what's going on. Moving quickly on to chapter 4. One thing I got, Tony, when they first got into Cauldron, the base, was it had kind of a haunted house feel. Even before you talk about meeting up with the custodian, it was
The custodian, like, just reminds me of, like, oh, this yeah, Scooby-Doo ghost kind of. I don't know why. I don't know why that popped in my head, but yeah,
oh,
I
come
get what you
on.
mean. Like that, like I mean, like the idea, like they're in this haunted house, and yeah, there's just like, creepy presence around. I don't know.
No,
I love the custodian though.
I like the setup from Wildbow. I think, and I could be wrong. I think it was kind of a deliberate feel that he gave us there. Would you agree with that, Tone?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair.
Andy?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past Cauldron. It kind of reminded me more of like going way old school, the old Mission Impossible
Mm.
episodes where they'd like drug some foreign diplomat and put him in a stage set, and
Hmm.
then he'd wake up and it looked like he'd killed somebody, and they'd get him to confess and stuff, and then they'd just take the walls down and it'd be in some warehouse or hangar or something.
Yeah.
You'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, you framed me, you know? So I could see where they would just put up like sets, but then, Taylor could tell that they hadn't just been built. They'd been around for a while.
Yeah.
That there was the same dust everywhere. So it wasn't like they had just built it and then scattered some dust on the outside. So I don't know. It was interesting, but yeah, I get it with I was thinking Casper, the friendly ghost, but
Yeah.
We
but I
don't,
had the same kind of thought.
and I think I asked you one of your early appearances, Tone, whether or not the custodian was whose daughter that we think Manton's daughter or something like that. Do we ever? I don't know if this is a safe question to ask here, and if it's not, just stop me there, Tony. Do we ever find out who the custodian it was?
Um, in this story, I don't believe so.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, they start walking down into the facility. Oh yeah, Canary's with them as well. So the team was like Canary, Lung, Sophia, Imp. Loved Imp messing with Sophia. That was great. Who else? Might have been a couple of other people, but
Gollum and Cuff.
yes, yes. Cuff. I know I'm jumping way ahead.
Actually,
Represent Cuff. She
sorry
was
to
in it.
interrupt.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think apparently in in arc 13,
Hmm.
you actually get her a brief backstory of her.
The
So I
custodian.
don't. Hmm.
I will jump back and try. And you said that was an interlude of Arc 13.
Yeah.
I will jump back and read
Black.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, did you like Cuff being such a little hellion in this, Andy?
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, never mind. Not 13 of this book. I'm sorry. Yeah, that isn't. No, no, I misread this. Okay, yeah, no, not in this story. I was
Okay.
safe. Original answer was correct.
All right, no problem.
I messed up. I'm sorry, guys.
No sweat, man. No sweat. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I liked Cuff. I thought she did pretty good. I also liked the people that they bumped into, Spur
Hmm.
and Spur especially, and it seemed like yeah, he was kind of doing a little bit of schmoozing almost with Canary or something,
Yeah,
and but it was hard to tell whether he was being a fanboy or if he was trying to, get in her head somehow.
just
Yeah.
manipulate them. What? Okay, all right. I'm clueless. Maybe you guys can help me. What was the purpose of the stalling action that Satyrical's group was doing? What would other than were they just trying to buy time for the Cauldron Capes or the Case 53s to get to the doctor to wipe her out, or what was going on there?
I was thinking maybe they wanted to get to the vials and we're hoping the other groups would clear down far enough and they'd come in and grab stuff and then
Oh, kind of a raiding. Is their purpose was more of a raiding party, just grab vials and then go. That's what you were thinking.
yeah, try to do the stuff that Skitter talks about later, trying to have multiple trigger events or
Mm,
combine a trigger event with a vial or, try to make something that would be able to stand up to Scion or be able to survive.
mhm.
But I don't know. That was just my theory.
And do you have any recollections on that, Tony? Any specifics?
No, nothing specific. I think like that was my general impression was yeah, just to wall off for the Case 53s, and then that yeah, they're the Taylor and Co was yeah, just to uh bag some stuff
Hmm.
and try to get out.
Andy, that whole scene where they were in one of those cells when they had retreated to that cell, and Mantilium and the others were out there riling up the former prisoners. That was a pretty scary situation. I was wondering if the team was going to have to actually fight their way out, but we were using her field general thinking. She managed to get them out with less danger than otherwise. Actually, I think that actually might have been due to the custodian because the custodian did push them back into that one cell rather than allowing them to go to a dead end. But having said that, Andy, that was a pretty terrifying situation.
Yeah, no doubt. That guy, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. The nullifier
Mantulum?
Mantellum?
Mantellum. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
Mantellum.
I mean, he was kind of a new flavor they hadn't really encountered, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it took her a while, Skitter a while to figure out, okay, well, you can sometimes tell where something is by the void that it creates, even if you
Yes.
can't detect it. But that was pretty brilliant, I thought. But yeah, her having to try to manage the people that were searching and then trying to make sure they were neutralized and not get in the fight, trying to make sure Long didn't just go, a man berserk and give them all away. And Long being like, hey, I don't take orders from anybody. So um he's always a
Even at the
fun
end of the world.
Right.
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 But
We're talking about survival of the species here, pal. Please play along. No.
yeah.
No, my pride is way more important than that. I'm sorry. I'm not
Well,
sorry, actually.
well, and I think it's so appropriate that Worm wrote it so that as he gets stronger, he gets even less communicative.
Yeah. Huh?
Like, not only can't he talk, he won't even listen at all anymore now. So he's just like a giant meat grinder. Well, I guess he's like the whole grill. He can grind meat and
Yeah.
cook it. That's
Well, we get a look at that later on, but
Oh yeah,
anyway,
regarding Mantulum, though, do you guys understand the distinction between like Hatchet Face and Mantulum with like how their powers work?
okay, so let me see if I remember. Didn't Hatchet Face suppress people's power? So,
Yeah,
no, what is the difference?
yeah. So from my understanding, like Hatchet Face is like a straight up like power nullifier in his area of effect.
Okay.
Um, it's like just your powers just straight up like just do not work.
Hmm.
But Mantulum's powers is more like it's a blinding effect to a shard. So like perceptions of the shards do not
Okay.
work under that area of effect.
I see. Okay. All right, cool. God, again, Wildbow, his ability to fine tune and read or make subtle changes and adjustments in people's power throughout this massive story. I'm always going to come back and be in awe. Come back to that and be in awe of just his ability to write these characters this way. It's just incredible stuff.
Yeah,
No doubt.
I think it basically like the way this power like is distinct is like I think really a really clever way to give someone like Contessa a really hard time.
Yeah,
Because of how this works as a blinding agent, like her precog abilities basically wouldn't work. Whereas against Hatchet Face, like as long as she's outside of that range, she would just win. But
well,
because of how Mantilum works, it's like you can't her power can't perceive this figure, and
yeah,
so everything is
Andy.
just perceived as a gray cloud or fog.
Yeah, to add on to that, Andy, it's a great in universe, and it makes the peril that Contessa was in seem even more uh, intense when you think of it in those terms. It's just a fog, and we this girl with the path to victory. Yeah, nah, not all the time.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those really subtle powers, that it doesn't seem like it'd be that big a deal, but it really almost took everything out. It was if it hadn't been for Skitter kind of coming up with the idea of just, basically a stab in the dark kind of thing.
With a nano knife.
Right.
Oh,
All right. Well, that was helpful.
that was okay. Look, it's no holds barred, and these are murderous capes who are in their way, who will murder them if they stumble upon them in that cell. I'm still just trying to get the imagery of Weaver having her bugs swoop through with a nano knife on a string, ugh, making contact with bodies.
Yeah, that was a really grim scene, and you know, it's got a kind of combination of the imagery we were talking about before, where you can't tell what's going on, so it doesn't seem that bad, but then you got to walk through it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see how bad it was.
Kind of a
And
less is
so,
more when it comes to well, I mean, well, like with Jaws, you didn't see the
mm,
shark until much later, but by God, you were frightened, you were terrified of it.
right, yeah, yeah, I can see that.
So kind of a well, I don't have to show you the disemboweling and the heads being chopped off and stuff, but yeah, it happened, and here's the aftermath.
Right.
Okay, moving further down into the chapter. Yeah, and that's where they run into Satirical's group at the end of one of the hallways. Right. They're yeah, moving into chapter 6. She meets up with Satirical's group, and they think about Weaver's wondering whether or not they're going to be betrayed by this guy. And that comes to that question of me wondering what was the purpose of Satirical's group. In this chapter too, Science shows up. There's just so much going wrong here. He came through one of the portals, I think it was Tony, and correct me if I'm wrong. And he shows up and he starts looking at all the vials that were down that vast chamber, and
Mhm.
I'm presuming he's recognizing them as uh, dead shards from his companion.
Yeah. If you would also recall one of the early interactions with Scion and Idol and how normally Scion was kind of straight-faced with pretty much everyone that's around him. But then when he looks at Idolin, you almost get a vague sense of like a look of disgust.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm,
this is basically another beat showing that like this is these basically they're parading around the metaphorical guts of his companion, and like to him it's like oh this is disgusting.
Yeah, and I don't think we've touched on that aspect to see if you picked up on that. I remember you did comment on the look that Scion gave Eidolon, but now, as Tony's put it, yeah, everybody's wearing his companion as a skin suit as far as shards
mm.
go, and so this kind of closing that loop for you.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Some things fall into place for sure.
And so, yeah, they're caught between literally a rock and a hard place. This entire cauldron facility is just insane. The structure, the big, gigantic 250 gazillion ton anvil or hammer, pardon me, that they drop down on Scion's head later on. Oh man, they get past satirical. They end up doing a toboggan ride down into an area where the doctor and what's left of her team is down on the bottom floor, and they end up in a fight with those guys initially because bitch came out of that slide and was like looking to fight people, and the number man and his clones make light work of them. They've got him, they've got Alexandria Pretender, and I forget who else is there, but yeah, the Taylor's team is in trouble.
Yeah, if I can go back for 1 second,
Sure.
talking about the Cauldron headquarters there, it did remind me a lot of the Birdcage. And so you definitely see that kind of tinker fingerprint of all these different systems that are all interconnected and can, support or collapse one another and provide these extra layers of protection or isolation. I thought that was pretty cool that there was kind of a continuity there for me, I guess, that those were similar setups.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
like
go ahead, Tony.
I was just gonna say, yeah, that's like I'm just thinking about like, oh, if you have capes, like not even factoring potential cauldron tinkers, but like you have the number man and Contessa that can also assist in like and the design of these
Mm.
things. Like you have, guaranteed like number structural integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh you have also the guarantee like, oh, this is how you do it to make sure that it's perfect. Like you basically can have effectively the perfect building that you want or whatever that you're wanting to do.
Oh, I did
Yeah.
have.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to comment. I do remember when they were. I'm making a note here. Um, when Weaver's team first arrived at the facility, and she found some paperwork, and they discovered that Accord had been two timing them and was had been
Mm.
working with Cauldron. Andy, I didn't want to blow past that in case you had any comment on it.
Well, I didn't see that coming at all, but it makes total sense in
Mm-hmm.
hindsight. For an ultimate planner, they're going to see that, all right, well, even if this has an 85% chance of going this way, I should cover the other 15%. How would I do that? Oh, well, I'll go work with the team I think is going to lose and also provide them with stuff. And that way I ingratiate myself with them. And so either way it goes, I'm good.
Hmm.
But that was pretty surprising to see and be like, oh yeah. And
Yeah, they
then
had Cauldron was
did
planning. Wait, you were gonna say something, Tony?
Oh no, I mean nothing. I was just yeah, God, agreeing. Like yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
he's still a villain at the end of the day, You always have a contingency plan for the planner.
Right. And so what I was going to jump on real quick was this whole terminus thing and how they were planning what happens if they lose this way, if they lose that way, if Scion and the Endbringers turn on them, if they manage to survive Scion. So there were several contingency plans in that little booklet that Taylor found, and they were Tattletale was able to break down some of the information that she was reading, and like you said, he was planning.
yeah, and I think that brings up a good point in that Tattletale said, all right, flip through all the pages and I'll review it later. So there could be more that comes out of this. I mean, I think it could be that Accord ends up helping more than he ever expected by Tattletale being able to go through his plans and stuff.
Yeah, I believe Tony they planned on parahumans for eventuality of parahumans being in charge, and she said that the Undersiders in Brockton Bay were a test case.
Yeah, I believe so. Because if I recall, the original plan was to use coil,
Hmm.
and so yeah, by with them, eliminating coil is like, all right, well. yeah, we'll just continue to let them be the replacement and just see what it goes. It doesn't it's not changing the numbers.
Right. I still want to know what Dinah's numbers are, but nobody's talking to her. So, but anyway, let's see. Moving here quickly into chapter 7. You know, Sveta is an incredibly tragic figure in this whole story.
Mm.
I, I don't know how to feel about her murdering the doctor. I don't even know if I want to call it murder. But
Manslaughter.
yeah, I mean,
And
the doctor,
deliberate manslaughter.
the
Like I really want
doctor,
to kill you, but I'm gonna accidentally kill you as well. Like I don't know how that holds up in court or
yeah,
what kind of charge it is. Like she doesn't like her.
right. And so, yeah, Tony, or excuse me, Andy, Wildbow takes that time to set up the disgust that Sveta has for the doctor. Now we know that being a case 53, she knows she comes to understand that she had been experimented on in this horrible fashion, but she has memories, and Wildbow takes us through these memories, setting the pretext for her to not feel guilty about slaughtering this person.
Yeah, this is an interesting case. I mean, you end up with all these different experiments. Some are going to go horribly wrong, some are going to be okay, and then you have Sveta, who is kind of it's like a rogue agent of some type that has an ability that is very scary, but she doesn't want to use it, but she can't really control it, or it's a super hard thing for her to control.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like that atomic energy guy from Heroes,
Oh, mm-hmm.
where he figured this thing out, but then he was getting to where, everybody saw that he was going to be the end of the world, or at least the end of New York, and so she really hates where she's at, and she's trying these different almost meditation strategies and mantras to try to control it. And
I'm sensing a lot of Jessica Yamada there.
yeah, I'm guessing you're right. But, I don't, some people, well, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to say that. Even somebody with a saint like Zen quality, I think, with all this stuff thrown at them,
Mm-hmm.
they might like pick up a stick and want to hit something. So even the best meditation isn't going to hold up in this kind of thing if that happens. So I don't begrudge Sveta at all. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm just sad, more sad for her that
yeah.
her body was gonna do it, because I know there's more there, Tony. With Sveta, I'm gonna ask you a question, Tony. It may be a spoiler, and if it's a spoiler, tell me so. Can you confirm whether or not Sveta shows up in Ward? If you can't, then never
Uh,
mind.
I mean, I could confirm or deny, right?
Okay,
But I
if
I don't know if you want to like
never
is that
mind.
something you actually want to know? Like
Um, I've so skimmed around the surface of Ward. I think I mentioned to you, Tony, one of my coworkers, John, the guy I got to read Worm. He moved on through Ward, and I think I might have asked him. I can't remember, but
yeah,
okay, never
there's
mind.
some prologue chapters
Hmm.
for Ward that do a really good job of giving you like they're not required at all,
They kind of
but
tidy things up.
they're not really tidy. They kind of help prepare you for what kind of story I think Word
Oh,
is
okay.
gonna be. And those like because these chapters came out like as a teaser for Ward,
Hmm.
in between Worm and Ward.
Okay.
So you could read that and you may find information one way or another, I suppose.
All right. Fair enough. But I find her a fascinating cape and a tragic figure. And if there was one person one of the people I'd be curious about would be whether or not what happens to her if she does show up in Ward. But anyway, where was I going? Andy, they managed to stop the fight between Weaver's team and the Cauldron, or the Cauldron's people, and they discuss options. This is before Sveta squishing Dr. Mother, righteously so. And there was the talk about the remaining vials that they had. There was like these three special vials that the doctor was going to take just as a crap shoot before this. Everything went south. Another
Right.
Hail Mary in this situation.
Yeah, so she claimed that she had the potential to trigger based
Right.
on their measurements. So they had saved these special, you don't know what you're going to get. Could be really good, could be beans, could be peas, it's so it's it's something that they're contemplating. That's how desperate things have gotten. So but then that's kind of taken out of their hand.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. What happened there? I can't remember. Was it did Scion explode something and then I can't remember
Yeah,
how that
yeah, I recall Scion being the cause of the vial. Um,
breaking.
yeah,
And then she couldn't take it, and then Sveta's sphere broke, and that was that. And yeah, they as we're moving, yeah, I know we are really moving through this arc fairly quickly. It's pretty dense. I know that, but we do have time limitations, as it were, and so we're going to do our best to cover as much important highlights as we can. What did you think of the partner, Andy? This description of this massive space warping entity that was in this several mile long cavern.
My initial thought was from stuff from Lovecraft
Mm-hmm.
with the thing with a million gibbering mouths, but not quite as horrible as that. A little bit more sedate, if you will, but it was still pretty weird, and it was just it was hard to wrap my mind around it, I guess.
Yeah,
I didn't
Weaver
really.
uses the word incomprehensible.
Yeah, yeah, and just kind of Picasso drawing spread out over a football field. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we might have gone past the part where Sveta inadvertently relieves Taylor of one of her arms.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. And again, it was another one of those things where you know Sveta didn't want to do any of these things, and it
Right.
just the tendrils just lashed out, and so. But it was not definitely not good for Skitter or Weaver or
Yeah.
Taylor.
All of the above.
There you go.
Tony, this is where Scion comes face to face with his partner and sees her there. And he has, I, yeah, kind of an emotional response. Yeah, definitely an emotional response, wouldn't you say? I mean,
yeah,
he stands there, absorbs the scene as it were, as it is, and then he goes to what would be her primary body and holds it tenderly for a moment before he finally annihilates her.
yeah. You can. Yeah, feel like in a way like kind of maybe an expression of grief of sorts.
Mm-hmm. So having Sveta toss chunks of his mate at him wasn't necessarily a cool thing to do. I mean,
Well,
Some would consider that bad manner. Yeah.
I get it. I mean, it's desperation here, and it worked effectively. But yeah, you pick up an arm here, you pick up a torso there. Here's Iron here. That's not necessarily a cool thing to do, but he is an evil, raging god monster. Um,
well, but like we were talking about him with his flex earlier, it's like this is just turnabout is fair play in my book. I mean, if you're going to be,
very true.
it's the FAFO, right? I mean, if you if you're going to be a butthead, then you got to expect other people are going to butt head right back. So
Hmm. Um, Andy, that moment where okay, so we were severely injured. Her arm is gone, and she or severely damaged, and Lung tries to get up in her face, trying to be the you. I mean, God, it's a little late for this now, Lung. She melted your junk off. She carved off your eyes, and now you're trying to be the man here when she's down and missing an arm. Whatever. What did you think of that moment, Andy?
this is Long being Long. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just always looking for a chance to push somebody vulnerable, and so he doesn't he bridles under the leash, and
Mhm.
even though it's not really a leash, they're just like trying to say, hey, you want the world to survive, right? Can you pitch in, put aside that knucklehead for a minute? But he doesn't see it that way. He's just a one track record.
And she manages to manipulate Lung into doing the one thing she needed, which was cauterizing the arm, burning it, and she passed out. But probably saved her life. And
Yeah.
there, and then after that, she's too weak to talk. She's too weak really to move. She's got her flight pack, thank goodness, and she's got her bugs that she can kind of talk through. And even in this sorry state, Tony, even down and out as she is physically, she still manages to coordinate and escape for the team.
Yeah, she's a badass.
Yeah, she marshals her resources. She's got the number man to come up with some calculations. She's got a way to use the Siberian clone to build a structure to secure them, and they're going to figure out how to demolition the this aircraft hangar and drop this hammer on top of Scion. Not bad for a girl who's on the border on the line of being comatose, Andy.
Well, not only that, but as she was kind of doing this weird navigation with the flight pack and pushing off a little bits of stuff, she almost encountered one of these weird multi-dimensional sections of the partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was pretty fascinating the way Wildbow wrote about that, that there was like this fractal edge that, if she had touched it, that she could have been in really bad shape, or part of her would have been gone, or who knows. But I thought that was really, she was able to have enough presence of mind to avoid that as well. But yeah, the plan was pretty amazing. You know, it's Scion, so I
Yeah,
didn't have very high hopes that it was going to do much of anything, but couldn't hurt to try.
yeah, it was a move. This whole situation again, Wildbow has managed to keep the terror level dialed up to 11 this whole time. The golden man is there, the body of the partner, the threat of collapse of the facility, and once again, it's written in a way where you're not even sure really who, if anyone, is going to get out of this situation, and it was scary for me anyway.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I figured it would just be all of them buried in here, and we'd have some kind of weird rescue or something that happened
Mm-hmm.
later. But yeah, they figure out a way, and it makes sense, like you said, you've got this hammer, so if you can just stay out of its way while it's going down, that should make a hole. But that's a big if. And
You really don't have any other things to try, yeah.
right.
We're moving on into chapter 9 here. They escape. Sveta's headed on out. And so, as far as we know, she got away. Alexander Pretender breaks them free. And they do end up back at what's left of a new location that the refugees, the teams are setting up kind of another makeshift hospital. I believe Tattletale clues her in. Am I thinking about that correctly, Andy? She tells her where they are, situation, and where they expect him to be. We're the next target for Scion. He's traveling Earths, and he is pissed off, wholly so now.
Right. Yeah, that sounds right. I believe it was Tattletale filling her in on that. I'm just trying to
So many
refresh my
capes.
memory.
Oh, yeah. I was going to bring up that there's so many capes here, Tony. It's hard for me to keep track of what's going on and who's where. They've got another, like I said, another hospital set up, and they're hoping to get some treatment for the injured in their team. And Taylor, of course, is like, do me last kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that part. Yeah, there's a reason for that for sure. Taylor wanting to go last.
Yeah, she had a plan. Uh,
Taylor has a plan.
right. Yeah, there was talk. Oh, she was watching video. That's what it was on there. They were on the Dragonfly, making their way back to the settlement, and they were watching video of Scion attacking various settlements on a couple of different Earths, and the Capes have Leviathan and Kansu, and he's still smacking everybody down and killing lots of people, and there's just nothing that can be done to stop him.
Yeah, that was disappointing. I figured they might get a little breathing room or something, but no such luck.
The speed with which he's attacking people it seems like it's increased, or it could just be that there's fewer and fewer people left to kill. And I believe it was noted that every time somebody, or you may have even said this, Tony, every time somebody who can kind of sort of stop him or gets his attention, he immediately turns to that person and snuffs him out.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that was my gavel comment earlier
Oh,
where
right. Mm-hmm.
he was he was making a little headway and that's enough of that.
Okay. Let's just skip right ahead toward the end of this. Tony, why does Weaver do this? Why does Taylor do this? Have Panacea do this on her?
Well, I don't know if you want me to answer that so
Well,
soon.
just be
Uh,
maybe
Okay. I guess
no, no,
the
no, no,
the
no,
direct
don't go into any details.
okay.
Is this where this character was bound to come? I mean, her. Dang it. You know what?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can't.
I'll answer that and say,
Yeah.
yeah.
She was always
Absolutely.
she was
Yeah.
always determined to get here, and it was Andy. She said to Panacea to not let Tattletale know. She didn't want Tattletale because Tattletale would see this as destructive, and she was going to. The whole purpose of what she wanted was
What? Giving
right.
Panacea, the person who has flawless execution on working with minds, you
Yeah.
know, didn't do anything terrible to her sister. That perfect Panacea. Yeah, why would you
Hmm.
think there would be a problem?
She
Very,
wanted
very stable.
she wanted more access to more power, Andy. That seems to be the gist of it.
Yeah, it's again desperation times. So folks are grasping at straws here, and she's thinking if there were built-in restrictions and we could bypass those, then maybe I'll be strong enough, or maybe I'll be enough of a strategist that I can coordinate it, and now I can find a way to victory. And that will be something that wasn't contemplated in other people's plans that somebody would do this. So it doesn't sound bad on paper, but then, yeah, Panacea, I guess that's a better choice than Bonesaw doing it. But uh,
Right, because Bonesaw, as she noted, people might tend to notice her pulling out a drill and sawing or a saw and hacking into her brain versus a subtle touch from Amy Dallin. Yeah, that was probably the more subtle thing to do there.
But I mean, let me ask you this hypothetical though. If you didn't have to sneak around, between Panacea and Bonesaw,
Mm.
which one would you pick to do your brain operation?
Oh, brother.
I'd still have to go with Panacea. I mean, she obviously had that one huge uh, bad operation, but
What are you talking about? She made her so much better.
Uh,
So many redundancies. Like, I mean, how would you
hmm
feel? Like, yeah, I maybe I needed like three stomachs and I needed, 10 arms and, six eyes. Like, yeah, in
Sure.
case.
Uh,
Anytime I think of that scene, I just think of this giant floating cat hairball. It's just like this.
uh,
It's just like it's
oh,
so gross.
oh, wow. Um, all right. Okay. So this was just a decision that is going to have obviously major implications for the rest of the story here. Before we move on to the interlude, Andy, I really rolled through this one pretty quickly. Was there anything else in this chapter 9, you wanted to touch on?
Yeah. So one thing for sure is Bonesaw was able to get the door maker going again
Right.
and hooked him back up with his partner, and all of a sudden they got doors back. So I don't know if that's too little, too late, but that's that's a good step, I think. And it was one thing where Bonesaw was very helpful.
Yes, she's still mm, a lifetime away from making up for the carnage she's caused, but she seems to be continuing on her step to regaining a stretch of her humanity. Andy, is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. The other thing was just a particularly gross description when Taylor asked if she was safe to go, and Panacea says, "Let me thicken the skin so your stump doesn't pop like a water balloon."
Right.
I was just like, "Oh, bull!" I threw up a little bit in my mouth on that one. That was too nasty.
I mean, she just came back from having her body disintegrated, and now she's lost her arm. Oh gosh, Tony. Before we hit the interlude, was there any of these chapters, anything you felt necessary to touch base on?
I think we hit enough of the beats. I don't recall any other than the final words of the chapter. Andy, I'm really curious to think how you felt when you read
Oh yeah,
those words.
let me read this, and then we'll let Andy respond. But there was a possibility that it referred to me. Oh yeah, this was in regards to Dinah's the note, Andy, that Dinah, where she said, "I'm sorry."
Right.
And he says, but it was a possibility that this was referred to me, that it was tied to our ability to come out ahead at the end of this, to some slim chance. Maybe there was a sacrifice involved. I shook my head, unable to articulate any of the arguments, to come up with something profound to say. I only said, do it. Panacea laid her hand across my forehead, and it all went wrong.
Yeah, I could have
Oh, yay.
I could have done without that last.
Not a kind not a kind way to leave you there, just kind of hanging there, is it?
Not at all. Yeah. And it's hard to know how to take it, because it could mean that, I it got all my wheels spinning. Did science show up? Did Panacea, just go brogue on her and decide to do something that she wasn't supposed to do? Um,
Or did it work?
right. Yeah. And maybe that's even worse than if it hadn't worked. Or maybe her insurance got declined. Oh wait, that that couldn't be it. But anyway, yeah, this was a cliffhanger that I would have preferred Wildbow did not give us.
I yeah, I only feel really bad for you. That you can like 'cause when I read the end of this chapter,
hmm
I could not. I was like, no, like I had to keep going. There was no way I was stopping there, no matter what time. I don't remember what time it was at night when I was reading this. But I was not stopping there. And basically, yeah, from this point forward, it was like I'm just locked in reading
Hmm.
the rest of the story.
Yes, sir. And then we're going to move on to the interlude. And Tony, this is where we get the point of view from the other entity, Scion's partner. Yeah, everything was great. They were floating along throughout across the void. They had kind of honed in on okay, we're going to move to this galaxy, we're going to move to this reality, and that's where we're going to set up shop and continue the cycle. And everything was cool until that third entity showed up, and Scion's partner and this entity shared shards, and it ended up throwing their plans, and throwing a wrench into their plans.
Yeah, I recall, I think they nicknamed the entity the Scholar.
The scholar? Wait, which
Uh,
one? The one that they encountered or Scion's partner?
the one they encountered.
The scholar?
Yeah.
I don't think I'd seen that before. Okay. I
I
think
think that was like it might be like the community nickname, I
okay.
think.
Now, Andy, well, I know I put it in my notes that
Or
there
no, or unless I'm getting confused because like no, there's a warrior in the skull. No, Eden. So Simon's partner is I think the scholar because it's the warrior and the scholar. I'm trying to remember what the
right.
third one was called.
And
Uh,
is the Scion's partner name is Eve, isn't it?
yeah, they named Eden.
The community named her Eve.
No, just I think Eden is the settled name on it.
Oh, Eden.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not any kind of a spoiler. So, Andy, I guess going forward, if we want to just to help the conversation, we can refer to Scion's partner as Eden. Then, but
Okay.
anyways, sorry, Tony. Did you want to talk about this interlude as we delve into it and their encounter, and then Fortuna becoming Contessa and that whole thing?
No, you guys can
Okay.
go ahead and jump in.
All right, Andy, what were your thoughts on this? Starting with Eden, her POV.
Yeah, this was really interesting. Nice to have it kind of harken back to the earlier stuff about the entities and how they encountered this third entity and something didn't go right during the exchange. The next part of it, I kind of got thrown off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really recognize a lot of these names. I didn't understand about these different
Well,
super weapons they have around the world and stuff. And I mean,
let
yeah.
me see if this helps. Did you get to a point where you picked up on it? I don't want to presume you didn't.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
For some reason, this really.
Look at that last part of before it jumps to this that section where Partisan and the others are. Um, at that moment, Eden was looking for an optimal future where they would be successful. They'd spread their shards. The shards would have lots of good conflict and blah blah blah, and then they'd gather them up and destroy the world. This was that. So, Tony,
Oh,
it's Earth bet, isn't it?
I actually don't think so. If I recall, I don't remember which Earth it was. I actually thought it was a different Earth.
Okay. All right. Well,
Uh,
maybe it's okay. So, but still, that is the premise here, right? It is the optimal situation where they were going to succeed and the cycle was going to continue. They had an entire planet
yeah.
full of conflict. So I think that you can tell
okay.
some
That
of
makes more sense.
these people are like they're kind of a an arms master and now an arms master
Analog.
analog. Thank you, brother. That's the word I was looking for. And then kind of a Miss Militia analog. So that's kind of
Hmm.
where that is from. I took that to be.
Okay, that makes sense. And then so they're also seeing a optimal projection of what Scion would be
Mm-hmm.
when they mention the entity and that's meeting with these folks, and he pretends to be tired, but he's not.
She. It is. It's a he and a she. It's she. We never get a name.
Oh,
We never get a name for her, and we just have the entity's partner standing there silently. And she uses one of her. I'm guessing it's the broadcast shard to redirect. Partisan. Partisan has an idea of what's going on, and
okay.
she uses her power to, you know, augment a memory, and kind of it's the same power that they use to keep the two sides, the wardens and the shepherds, I believe, are the sides that keep them from ever coming to a peace agreement. And now you've got these various super weapons, Endbringer analogs, if you will, I guess, around the planet, and the two sides are just waiting to annihilate each other.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see. And right after that section, the warrior broadcasts interrupting the simulation. So this is
Mm-hmm.
them just looking at a possible thing. Okay, now I'm getting it.
And so, yeah, but unfortunately, things go bad from this point for Eden. She crashes into Earth. One of the shards she exchanged or something like that, something had gone sideways with the merging with the other one. And she kind of looked up from her phone, and before she hit the tree, if you were. I mean, that's kind of a
Right.
crass way to put it, but but that's kind of true, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's
that seems like it.
Tony, we get Fortuna waking up, and Fortuna sees the path to victory. She's not understanding initially her planet, or pardon me, her village has just been inundated by shards and parts of Eden's body all over the place, and it's been a horrific 3 days. She comes to understand that uses this power to see what the situation is, and sets off to try to find the source and kill it. That was her purpose early on.
yeah. From what I understood when I read it, it was something like Eden messed up and accidentally gave the an unrestricted I win shard
Mm-hmm.
to Fortuna. And then she's like, oh, and then immediately takes action to strike her when she's vulnerable. And then Eden's trying to like restrict it, but it was already too late. Like the steps had already been processed. So she gets, I think, restricted eventually, but the she was already moving toward winning. And so yeah, it basically keeps Eden from being able to form.
Oh, by yeah, stabbing her in the neck or whatever.
Yeah.
It was at a critical moment. And yeah, and this is where she meets up with Andy. This is where she meets up with the woman who will eventually become the doctor. They were from two separate Earths, I'm guessing. And that's where she couldn't Fortuna couldn't see where to stab Eden, and she had to get help from this woman, and boom, she rendered her crippled. And that's how, I'm guessing, that's how they first saved the world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then we get them initiating their efforts into creating Cauldron, and how they first first tried out a sample of vial, and that was not a good thing at all. Their first test case was fatality, and but again, this was the first of many steps that Contessa, now she calls herself Contessa, saw in order to get them to where they would be in a position to defeat the other entity. That was her goal. She saw what the god beings were like, and she was asking her power, how do we defeat them? And it was going to take a lot of experimentation and death along the way.
Yeah, so this is like you said, this is a this unrestricted shard, and they're trying they know that it's kind of like they're a big lab
Mm-hmm.
for the entities, and so it's like, well, let's make our own lab and see if we can
Yeah,
cook up something to get ourselves out of this.
yeah, that was the thing. Tony, it makes sense that her path to victory tells her that as a young teenager, I guess you could say, people would be wary of having this teenager come up to him and say, "Here, drink this thing." And that's part of the reason she did this partnership with the doctor in order to put an adult face on the front of this thing to try to lend it a little credibility.
Yeah. Basically, like as having the doctor serve kind of as a proxy for
Right.
all these things was yeah, just part of the set of steps needed.
Right. Andy, the facade may have been the fact that the doctor was the face of Cauldron.
Mm.
I want to say one of our
Yeah.
might I'm not sure when this came up. Might have been the Noel arc, the Echidna arc. Some point in the past, you and I have commented on that the use of the word facade, and I was like, you may want to hold on to that thought process.
Yep. Yep. You're right.
So she fakes her death. That whole thing where we were worried about whether or not she was able to escape Weld's group. We find out what happened to her, Andy. She was pretty clever diving through that window that the number man had open in his office, and then faked her death in some lava.
Yeah, that was pretty smart. I mean, but that's her power, right? So
Yeah. Yes.
it's hard to like be like, oh wow, she figured that out. It's like, no, it was right there. That was her power.
It was
So,
obvious. Come on, what's wrong with
but it's pretty cool still. Yeah.
you? And then after she does, she meets up with teacher. Now, I think we discovered that the fog of Scion's power keeps her from seeing certain things, so she needed to team up with someone else in order to help her around that. And now, I mean, the doctor's dead. She couldn't bring herself to feel bad about it, and now she's teamed up with teacher. Oh, I'm sure nothing bad's gonna come from that, right, Tony?
Yeah. Teacher, stand-up guy, like the cut of his jib. There's no way that this will bite us in the ass in any way, shape, or form. He's on the up and up.
Good guy, fine, upstanding citizen of Earthbed.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
respectable profession, like a teacher. Yeah, of course,
This cause you any worry at all, Andy, that she's imprinted on teacher now, if you will?
No, I have unlimited optimism back online. So,
Yeah, yeah. Everything is as it should be.
oh my
Okay.
gosh, yeah, no, this is definitely seeming more and more like the cure is worse than the symptom. So, I,
I don't know what you mean by that. And as we're moving toward the end, let me read this section here where Contessa and teacher are talking. And she's playing down her role with trying to defeat Scion, and it says, "To the contrary," teacher said, we very much need your help, or we might." She narrowed her eyes. "With saving us from ourselves," he said. "Case in point, we've got a crisis that involves one little lady I think you're familiar with." He held up his phone. A picture was displayed. It took her a moment to recognize the person in the picture, and not because it was an unfamiliar face. "Weaver," she said, or she asked. So, yeah, Andy, this is an indication of things not necessarily going well with this whole panacea thing, and you're going to have to wait to the next arc to find out what happened.
what?
And it's all
Oh
goodness and light,
man.
I'm sure. And that's it for this arc. Okay, brother Andy, tell me your overall impressions of this arc.
Yeah, this one had a lot of meat on the bone for sure. I mean, we've got all sorts of pretty amazing battle scenes, got lots of cool tech. We've got conspiracies within conspiracies and betrayals, revenge. This was a solid, yeah, like a smorgasbord. This had everything in it this time. This was pretty
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Tony, do you have any thoughts on this arc?
Yeah, no, yeah, this it's all gas from here. So I was just like I could not stop reading everything that was that was going on. I'm just like how I like the more I kept reading, I was like, dude, this is so impossible. Like how
Mhm.
how is he gonna write this out? Like there's just I did not have very high optimism going, especially at the end of the arc. Um, so yeah, from my end, I'm just like, all right, well, how is humanity going to get destroyed cleanly and efficiently? Like how quickly is it gonna go here with one arc remaining? But wow, the other thing to before we end, what were your Andy? What were your thoughts of how the Seamerg was kind of interacting with Taylor and Lisa, and
Yeah.
how that ties with what like when she was kind of reviewing the note. I don't think I got to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You never know if what the Seamerg, well, that's not true. You always know that the Seamerg has some other motive than just what's on the surface.
Hmm.
And it's usually a bad motive, or at least what we perceive as a bad motive. And so, yeah, when you kind of put those 2 points together, where Taylor's got a voice talking in her head, and then she, that reminds her of the note and gets her thinking about all this stuff. Is that
Hmm.
something the Seamerg planted, or tipped the domino over to get that chain going? And then, yeah, what's been going on with Tattletale as well, and trying to get her thinking in certain directions. Yeah, I hadn't kept that in mind while I was reading it, but that would make sense.
Yeah. Do you recall if I don't remember. Do you recall if the Seamerg was screaming at the time when Taylor heard the "I'm sorry" in her head?
Was she singing a
No, I think she was
lullaby?
singing a lullaby.
She was
Yeah.
singing. Okay.
Oh, that's not more frightening than the screaming, is it?
No, I always wanted Hannibal Lecter to sing me to sleep. I mean,
Sure.
that sounds wonderful.
Tony, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I just wanted to at least put a spotlight on that because I personally feel that yeah, I think that was very relevant to the actions and the consequences of what we're going to see going forward.
Awesome. Okay. And now it's time for Andy to announce his choice for key character of the arc. Whether hero or villain, cape or civilian, Andy will identify the characters that stood out to him, whether it's for good or ill. Andy, who's your selection and why?
Well, man, we sure had plenty to choose from in this one. The cast of characters was pretty immense, but I'm actually going to go with two. One is kind of an honorable mention.
Okay.
So the first runner up, I guess I'll call it, is Sveta. I mean, we were talking about what a tragic character she was, and she got her revenge, but she ended up kind of trying to do the best she could under those circumstances. And then toward the end, she helped out quite a bit, even when she was a wreck. She had just
Yeah.
wrapped herself around something to try to keep from doing anything wrong, but was able to connect enough and cause a major distraction there. So I think I give her well, and she was also used as a I don't know, like a suicide bomber kind of thing, where it's like, don't move or I let her out. So
Yeah. Oh, right. Forgot about that. Hmm.
yeah, I she played a big role, I think. So she gets honorable mention, but I hate to say this, but I'm gonna have to pick Siberian as my key character.
Ooh,
Wow.
Manson. Oh,
Yeah, they the way that they kept, without that, they would have been buried like 5 different times. They wouldn't have been able to get out of 3 different sections, and she was integral in trying to drop the hammer at the end too. So, or making sure people didn't die when the hammer dropped. But yeah, as much as I hated her in the Slaughterhouse 9
Hmm.
arcs, she was my key character in this arc.
Comments, Tony?
Yeah, at this point in the story, I believe it's I don't recall the Siberian itself being used, and it was Manton, but was the Siberian actually present?
Yeah. Yeah. It
Okay.
was one of the man clones and
It's
It was
one of the
Man
clones.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Using the Siberian, and that's how they kept from getting mushed. But
Oh.
yeah, that was it. So okay. Key character is Siberian / Manton, and the runner-up is the troubled but meaning well Sveta. And here's hoping she found her way out of that mess. So
Yeah, good, interesting picks. I like it.
yeah.
Cool.
And that's it for now, folks. So knowing how dense the next chapter is, or the next arc is, we're asking Tony to come back and join us for this and eventually for the epilogue. And as we're moving forward, of course, scheduling can be a little dicey. So please pardon us if there's a little bit of a length between this episode and arc 30. We will endeavor to get it to you as quickly as we can. And we will hope that you will return for that. Thanks so much to all of you who have stayed with us through this long journey. We really appreciate you being here. So until next time, take care.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Tony, for joining us. Always a pleasure. It's great having you here and having your expertise. And we'll talk to you all soon.
All right, well, thanks again for having us. Take care.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.